Okay, let's dive into this. Debt is one of those things that's just everywhere, right? Student loans, mortgages, credit cards, it's a constant part of modern life. But what if the whole concept wasn't designed to be a life sentence? Today, we're going to look at a pretty radical ancient idea, the art of wiping the slate clean.
So to get us started, let's just try a little thought experiment. And it might sound like pure science fiction at first.
No, seriously. Just take a second and actually think about that. What if tomorrow morning you woke up and an announcement was made and all of your personal, non-commercial debt just poof, it's gone? How would that change your life? How would that change our entire society?
Well, here's the twist. As wild as that sounds to us today, for some of the world's very first rulers, this was not a daydream. For them, wiping the slate clean wasn't some fantasy, it was an absolutely critical tool for survival.
To really get this, we need to jump in a time machine and go back thousands of years, back to ancient Mesopotamia, to check out what we could basically call the ancient reset button.
The actual name for this practice was a debt jubilee, and what it was a royal decree coming from the top that would periodically cancel the kinds of debts that regular people fell into. Think about farmers who had a bad harvest, that sort of thing. It was aimed right at those crushing personal debts that could tear a society apart, not, say, commercial loans between merchants.
And the process itself, it was surprisingly direct. So a new king comes to power, and one of the first things he'd often do is issue a clean slate edict. It's a great way to get everyone on your side and start fresh. And this was not just for show. They would literally gather up the clay tablets that recorded all these personal debts and ceremonially smash them to pieces. Talk about a clean break.
But why? Why would they do this? I mean, it wasn't about being generous. It was pure pragmatism. See, these rulers were smart. They knew that if too many people got buried in debt, they'd lose their land, they'd be forced into debt servitude, or they'd just pack up and flee the kingdom. And that meant no more taxes and a whole lot of social unrest. So the Jubilee was just a practical way to hit reset, restore the balance, and keep the whole kingdom from falling apart.
The source material for this explainer calls it an ancient safety valve. And that's just the perfect analogy, isn't it? It's like society was a pressure cooker, and all this personal debt was building up, and the Jubilee was the way to release that pressure before the whole system just exploded.
Okay, now let's slam on the brakes and jump from the ancient world right into ours, where, well, the whole philosophy of debt is completely different. Let's talk about what our source calls the permanent subscription.
I mean, the contrast here is just stark. Back then, debt was seen as a temporary thing, an obligation you were either supposed to repay or, in these special cases, have forgiven. But today, so much of modern debt is actually designed to just be managed and rolled over forever. It's shifted from being a temporary problem to a permanent condition.
And here's an analogy that really makes it all click. Modern debt is a permanent subscription you can never cancel. Think about that. It's like a streaming service for money. That monthly payment just becomes a part of the fabric of your life, maybe forever.
And this right here reveals a massive shift in thinking. For huge parts of our financial system, from entire governments all the way down to us, the goal isn't really full repayment anymore. The goal is perpetual management. As long as you keep making those minimum payments, the subscription just keeps going.
So, all of this brings us to the really big central question of this whole explainer. In building this incredibly complex, permanent system of debt we have now, is it possible we've forgotten a really important lesson from our ancestors?
Those ancient rulers learned, probably the hard way, that there are limits. You just cannot trap an entire population in obligations forever without the system eventually breaking. It just leads to massive instability. So the really provocative question our source material asks is, have we forgotten that lesson?
And that's the thought I really want to leave you with today. Ancient rulers had their safety valve, the Jubilee. It was a societal reset button. So in our modern system, which is built on this idea of permanent debt, where forgiveness is almost never on the table, we have to ask ourselves, what is our safety valve? And what happens when the pressure just keeps on building?